All right, today let's discuss how the first Nebraska Minnesota game went and how I anticipate today's game going and trying to understand what some of the different plans and philosophies were. So the first thing we're going to look at is Nebraska's defense and talk about a couple of the impacts and actually how one thing Nebraska changed on defense. Two things, I guess, Nebraska changed on defense. The first thing we're going to see is Minnesota did a good job skipping the ball when Nebraska doubled in the post. So here's the first example of that. The ball slowly gets worked around. We see the ball entered in the post. Boom. Here comes the double. Derek Walker's coming here. Greasel's taking the low man. Up here, we got Gary and 25 up here. And the Minnesota the Minnesota player is going to skip the ball across for an open 3. Here we can see round 2 of this same situation. Ball gets entered into 21. Double. Skip. Nebraska does a decent job. This is a much better situation where Nebraska rotates and at least get a hands up. And this is a much better shot than Nebraska wants to force. Nebraska can force that shot. It's okay. The first shot is not okay. Now we jump ahead to the second half. We're going to see a similar action. Minnesota gets the ball into the post. One big difference here is when Derek Walker is the one guarding the post, the double actually does not come. Nebraska chooses to stay home on the perimeter and or number 1 who's floating around the high post and let Derek Walker play one-on-one. A big thing that we're going to have to watch here is what Derek Walker's foul count is and I guess how they handle that with Blaze Keita as well coming into the game. Again, we can see this is not just a one-off occurrence. Nebraska really hasn't done this very much throughout this year, so the fact that they did it here is interesting. I'm curious when Derek Walker's matched up one-on-one, what Nebraska chooses to do. The second area that I'm really curious to see is Nebraska obviously lost a bunch of size with the 2 injuries, and so Sam Hoiberg and Tominaga are going to get a significant amount of minutes today for sure. Probably maybe a little bit lower than average because of how long, just big Minnesota is compared to Nebraska. And so I'll be curious because Minnesota is definitely going to try and target the situation. We can see 3 here is immediately trying to post up, and that's where Minnesota's looking. You can see, if we just go back a little bit, the coach is pointing, telling, he's like, look, Tominaga, look at him. And so they're down here looking to get the post up right here. And then Minnesota does a really good job of doing the high-low where this dude is going to flash up and they're going to pass to him and look for a little over-the-top pass. It's going to be an easy layup. And so how is Nebraska going to defend this when Minnesota inevitably tries to attack Nebraska, attack Tominaga, and attack Hoiberg with this? One nice thing is Nebraska was able to defend it when Rutgers and Maryland, they both tried to take advantage of that. Nebraska was able to defend it by playing solid, good, sound defense and showing help whenever undersized guard was in the paint. The other area that the size is going to impact is on offense rebounds. Nebraska is going to have to, and this is a good defense here, Nebraska is going to have to make sure they send all 5 to the glass every single time because Minnesota is going to have bodies and they're going to crash the glass because they know they need to win that in order to have any advantage today. Okay, so let's switch to Nebraska's side of the ball. For the first thing is Minnesota showed this press a couple times, kind of similar to, I think it was maybe Rutgers 2 games ago, or it was where it's like a token press, just try to slow you down essentially. I don't see it causing Nebraska any issues, but after they break the press, Minnesota drops down into a little 2-3 zone, which they did not run very much of, but it is worth noting. And then they switch to a man here at some point, just about like right now. Now they switch back to the man. And so we'll see how much Minnesota runs this. It didn't affect Nebraska very much. I only saw it a couple times throughout the day. Here's the other clip of it. Here's the other clip that caught my eye at least. And Nebraska, as I showed in previous videos against Rutgers, really did a good job against the zone. So I don't anticipate Minnesota running too much of it, especially with Derek Walker being such a good passer in the post and having decent 3-point shooters surrounding him as well. Okay, one of the next things that I anticipate seeing quite a few of are backdoor cuts from Tominaga. Probably mostly Tominaga, maybe Greaso a little bit too. But when we get the ball in the high post, we can see in this situation, I believe it's Greaso who gets the backdoor cut. But Minnesota doesn't provide a whole lot of help off, and they're going to be able to provide less help off against Nebraska, especially if Nebraska's playing Tominaga and Hoiberg more minutes. And so in these situations with Derek Walker being such a good passer, these opportunities are going to be open. I won't say a guarantee, but I think Tominaga will likely have at least 2 backdoors, and probably 1 or 2 other Huskers also get some. And the last area that I think is crucial, this is probably going to be the biggest impact on the game, is how Minnesota guards Derek Walker. So we've seen Maryland, especially in the last game, sent a lot of help at Derek Walker. In the first matchup, though, Minnesota is not going to be the team that's going to do that. They're going to largely let Derek Walker play one-on-one against their bigs, which is potentially dangerous. It probably depends a lot on what Derek Walker's foul count ends up being in the game. If he stays low and foul and is able to essentially have the offense go through him, I could reasonably see him having legitimately a career day. So again, just time after time, opportunities to send doubles, even with relative non-shooters. Gary's not really a shooter. This defender could easily give quite a bit of help on Derek Walker, and it's loose if non-existent. Yeah, it's a non-existent. To summarize, the big things I believe we're looking at in this matchup is the size difference, how Nebraska handles playing with smaller guards, how they handle Derek Walker in the post, whether they send help or just leave it one-on-one. And then on offense, how Minnesota chooses to handle Derek Walker in the middle, I think is going to be a large part of the game, if not all the game.